Okay guys, the camera test is well and truly done, and episode 2 of Boston Bound is well and truly underway. So I just finished up Mondays. It is Monday the 30th of, wow, what month is it? October. Hey, that's the one. So yeah, Monday 30th of October. We're almost in November. We are very close to Halloween, and we are also very close to firework nights. Extremely exciting. I will not be, well, I most likely won't be partaking in either. I like firework night. I might go to that. But Halloween is a no-go. Why? Even on 400 grams of carbohydrates a day, I will not be fitting in candy into my allowance. And to be fair, that you know, I've not actually come off my meal plan and gone to any sort of macro tracking in a long time. My days are very much spent copy and pasting my diary into my MyFitnessPal several times. So anyway, that was a good session. Feeling good. A little bit of an update on myself. So I weighed in at 146.8 this morning. My lightest of prep, or lightists with an S, have been in the high 145s. So I'm still a little bit off my lightest, but that was when I was sort of quite depleted at that stage. So I'm kind of happy with where I'm at, and from a physique point of view, it was a case of, you know, I'm still holding on to some of the glycogen stored from the fact that I was on 500 grams of carbohydrates the whole of last week comparative to my normal, which is like 400. So I increased carbs by 100 for an entire week, and to be fair, guys, like, I went up about a pound, but the difference in how I felt last week was quite shocking in a very, very, very positive way. So essentially in 2015, it took me, honestly, a good, I'd say 3 months to recover my libido and actually feel relatively normal. Even though I was adding like body fat, I was adding, it got to the point where I was about 15 or 20 pounds above stage weight, and I still didn't feel that good. Whereas last week I added, I mean, some of this will be the adrenaline rush from the show, etc., but you can't really just say that adrenaline rush would cause such physiological changes. I don't think that that's possible. So I upped my food by 100 grams of carbohydrates. I left fats and protein the same, and within 3 days I had a sex drive. Legit. Like, I was like, wow, what is this? What is this strange creature that's making me slightly attracted to females? And yeah, so that's actually very positive news in the fact that I probably won't have to add too much poundage to the body in order to start feeling relatively normal again, which, in all honesty, I love prep and I don't really want it to end, but I wouldn't mind feeling normal again, to be honest. You know, dropping my food over the weekend back to baseline, and I feel like garbage again. Not like total garbage, but I feel definitely affected by that food drop, which just breeds relevance to how it feels to be in a deficit. You know, it just feels not so fun. But nevertheless, we still truck on, and we still tick our boxes, and I'm still feeling super motivated. I'm definitely already feeling. Notice when I brake, my body's not really quite strong enough to even stay upright. I'm like a feeble fucking 140.5 pounds piece of meat. Oh dear. So yeah, we keep trucking along, we keep ticking our boxes. The reality is, guys, like, prep is what you make it. If I made these videos and just was like boring, why would you want to watch that? So I try to be a bit funny, despite the fact that, you know, sometimes I do feel a little bit rubbish, and that's honest. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you everything's hunky-dory, because that'd be lying, and that'd be saying that prep is easy, and the reality is it's really not. It's difficult if you do it right, if you actually get contest lean. So yeah, that's an update on me. Nutrients at the moment are at 400 grams of carbs, 55 grams of fat, 180 grams of protein. Probably won't be changing them for the majority of the rest of the prep. If body weight drops too significantly, I won't refeed. Not a fan of them at the moment. They just throw up too many variables. So instead of refeeding, the only variable that might bring me to a refeed is sort of testing the water with a potential carb up. But I don't think that I really need to do that, because I'm pretty sure I'm certain in my approach and what I'm going to be doing. And I can at least assess that with the way that I'll work that, because it'll be a whole week of peaking essentially. But this week will be, you know, all on those numbers, and then hopefully by the time we reach the weekend, I'll be in a position to increment food up again, which will most likely come from carbohydrate, little shifts in carbohydrate. And then my plan post show is actually just to increase protein up to about 220 grams, for reasons being that can create some more satiety, and protein is the least likely macro to be stored as body fat. So post show strategies, it's an interesting variable to chuck into the equation, just to up your protein to definitely the upper end. That can, like I said, provide decent levels of satiety, so fullness, in terms of you feeling full, not fullness on the physique. And yeah, because of the thermic effect of protein as well, the ability for you to actually utilize that and for it to not be stored as body fat is incredibly high comparative to carbs and fats, dietary fat. So yeah, that'll probably be my initial plans, and then we'll go from there really, and just slowly increment carbs and fat up. I don't really feel like I need to do any sort of drastic bumps or anything like that. Can't see. So this is my post-workout shake, just to tide me over until I get a meal, which is immediately as I get home, pretty much. Blinded by the sun. This is 27 grams of Dymatize ISO 100, which I highly recommend. Fudge brownie, very tasty. Cool, guys. Hey guys, so welcome to some element of a voiceover over some of these clips. I don't know whether I'll be able to chat for the entirety of this session, or whether I'll go off on some sort of wacky tangent as I usually do. But yes, this was the first session of the week, so this was actually Monday, which was a good session. Again, like this week of training, I've just literally finished up my entire week, so I train from Monday till Sunday. I train from Monday till Saturday, and then I take Sundays off. So I always start my week on a Monday quite fresh, and that breeds, usually, like when I'm in a deficit, like really digging, it breeds good sessions up until Wednesday. And I think the way that I'd structure my training in the future is I'd maybe situate a rest midweek as well as the end of the week. I think we all get to a point in a prep where we do have a tendency to want to do more, and the idea there being that more is better, when in reality actually more can be quite detrimental. Our volume in the gym and our ability to recover when in digging phases is drastically reduced comparative to what you're able to do in an off season. So guys, like if you're expecting
expecting to be able to perform at your usual intensities when you are in those digging phases, it is certainly going to be difficult. Something that I did definitely learn this prep is the great benefit of doing things like this. Okay, so this is a very well supported locked in move. So the benefits of this comparative to something like a flat dumbbell press is that I don't have so many moving parts. When you have a ton of moving parts with a flat dumbbell press, essentially what we're trying to do in a flat dumbbell press is control the dumbbells, set up well, get our back positioning correct, and to achieve optimal intensities and thus gain volume and gain training volume, and also retain strength with something like a flat dumbbell press is very, very difficult. So situating things like machine-based movements where you're supported to hell and back is actually very, very beneficial when you are in those latter phases, and I do think that that's something that's actually enabled me to hold on to more tissue than ever before, especially in this phase where essentially whilst I have been upping my nutrients, I am still very lean. So you can't forget that, you know, despite having more fuel, I'm still lean. This is why staying lean post show is not the goal. It's not the goal because your ability to train hard and do like Matt Jansen says, do the hard stuff is drastically reduced by the fact that it just hurts to sit down on a fucking wooden chair. You know? Imagine what it feels like to try and squat 180 kilos. It wouldn't happen because my leverages suck, my body fat is too low, and my ability to do those really cool things that actually, guys, build muscle because I spent a lot of time doing those things when I was fatter. Or I hate saying fatter, when I had more body fat. And those are the things that we need to be doing. So I do think that a lot of people disregard this when dieting down. They don't maybe maximize what they could be doing, and it's something that I've certainly learnt. Okay, so I've learnt this. In 2015, I tried to hold on to my squat, I tried to hold on to movements that simply weren't feeling good for too long, and therefore I do believe that I sacrifice tissue, and I think that I've actually done that with clients. I've watched people's quads wither away. I think, and he won't mind me saying it, but Andrew, who I prepped earlier in the year, I think he lost considerable quad mass because we were trying to hold on to his squat for too long, and that was the only move that was really fading for him. Whereas I think if we'd at that point said, okay, let's stop being stubborn with the back squat and let's introduce a hack perfectly executed, I think he would have retained more tissue. That is just my thoughts. Anyway, at this stage in my training, things are kept fairly static. I'm doing a lot of volume, but I'm sticking with still, obviously, my heavier compound-based exercises first, with some element of a top set followed by down sets. The way that I work up to those top sets is essentially I warm up whilst minimizing fatigue and maximizing readiness. That's something I've always talked about. So minimize your fatigue on warm-ups, maximize your readiness to train. Get your top set done, whether you're doing a top set in 1 rep range or 2. It usually is 2 for me, so it usually looks like I'll work up to a 6 to 8 top set and then do another top set which might be either 10 to 12 or 15 plus, and then I'll continue to accrue training volume via down sets, and they will usually be in a higher rep range, or the higher rep range, so it will usually be 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 with a real focus on continuous tension, so no element of rest pause will be used on a down set. Be continuous tension with a load that I can handle with, of course, perfect form. And then the rest of the session looks like, you know, a few sort of accessory movements, like for example in this session I did a flat dumbbell fly, and then we move on to more so my metabolite work or my higher rep sort of cell swelling accumulation work, and that's what you've seen across the past few clips of this push session. I usually finalize my push sessions with triceps, of course, and I keep things very, very simple for triceps, and I don't see a reason why you'd want to overcomplicate things with tricep based moves. You know, a push down works, an overhead move for the long head of the tricep, and a push down, it is pretty much all you need. And on these days, or on this day, for some reason I did abs, and I have filmed that. One of my favourite moves is just a rope cable crunch, and I load this pretty light, here we go, and I focus on just spinal flexion. See, a lot of people just don't crunch their spine up how they should do on this movement. Like, the only ever case where you want to crunch up your spine like this is when you're doing a crunch. This is how you activate your abs. And I breathe out whilst doing them, so breathe out to end the rep, and then obviously catch my breath again and go down. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure this clip ends with a overhead movement for the tricep, which is of course for the long head, and then we move into a few clips from some other sessions which I will explain in the next voice clip. Okie dokie, so here we go. My favourite squat variation at the moment, and another reason why we can look at using slightly supported moves over your generic barbells and dumbbells when in those final phases of a deficit, when you are really, really struggling to maintain stability, maintain core tightness. This has allowed me to get like such a great connection with my quads. If I hadn't have had this movement, what would I be doing? Like, fucking around with a barbell back squat with a load that is just not adequate, just not enough to elicit the response that I need in terms of holding on to the tissue in my quads. You may well notice that my initiation of this move is with my knees going out and my hips going back. Try that when you do any sort of quad movement. The next time you do a quad movement, try to externally rotate your knees, tilt your hips back, so posteriorly, and then that will automatically turn the fuck on with your quads. So yeah, give that a shot. So I've got here a barbell row, and you can see me sort of basically with these is, you know, it may well be 80 kilos on the bar, but I'd rather barbell row 80 kilos perfectly than barbell row 120 kilos with no element of actual back contraction, okay? And that's what you see a lot of people do, really, and that's why none of those people have a back. So a bit of footage from pull again with seated V-bar rows, and these are a movement that I've had in for a long time. I think they're one of the best movements for really building density and thickness in the mid to lower back. So when you hit those sort of I always think of pulling my hands back and hitting those rear shots and really building that thickness and density there. Of course, being in a deficit, I'm not going to be building any sort of thickness or density in my back, but for sure in the off season, keeping that move consistent was a really big key in building my lower back and mid back density, which I think really does stand out on stage, especially if we think about the ability to lay down that muscularity whilst in a gaining phase. Because if you don't have that tissue there by the time you start dieting, you're not going to have that thickness when you do hit those shots when you are super lean, and that can really take away from your overall balance of your physique. If body parts fade during a diet, it's not all the time due to the fact that you did something wrong throughout your training or you rushed the deficit a little bit. It's namely down to just not having enough muscularity there in the first place. So that's something that we've really got to think about, is like, if you've seen body parts fade, like for me, I really do think my upper chest and my arms are body parts that have faded in this contest prep. And what I'll be doing to fix that is not doing something drastically different with the training throughout the deficit, but what I will be doing is doing something different in terms of building more tissue there. So laying a good focus on my arm training and on my upper chest training whilst I am in a calorie surplus. And you'll have also seen with the V-bar seated row and the incline Smith machine press that I was doing rest pause. Now, my thoughts on rest pause training is essentially, especially when we're in a deficit and we're trying to accrue both intensity and volume, rest pause can be beneficial, not only from a safety point of view, in terms of stopping when you feel like a rep there's a 95% chance you're not going to get it, and instead of completely stopping, we allow ourselves to reset and then go again.
Okay, camera test done. We're rocking and rolling. It's Friday. Hey guys, happy Friday. So this week has gone really well. There's not really much to say because at the moment it feels odd. Like I'm just sort of in such a routine that doesn't really feel like much changes. The way that I work things, guys, is I get up, I take my pictures, I gather my own opinion, and I make any sort of auto-regulatory adjustments that I feel that are needed in the AM. And then what I do from there is I tend to send my pictures to Jack, not Piad, but Piad. Jack looks at me once every week anyway. He's going to look at me tomorrow, which is Saturday. But yeah, I send them to Jack Thorburn, who's also one of my very close friends. He's got a good eye for, and he knows it. Basically, Jack, and he won't mind me saying this, he is very neurotic. If you know Jack, he is someone that will, like, he'll push when he potentially doesn't need to push, and he'll put himself under excess pressure when he doesn't need to, and he'll make himself feel like shit and do things with his diet or his training or cardio, whatever, to get that extra ounce when potentially that extra ounce is actually not doing him any good. So he knows exactly what it's like to be in a position where you're pretty damn shredded, although I must admit that I think Jack is on a whole nother level of conditioning. I think he's even way, in my opinion, I think he's way leaner than I've gotten, which is saying something. And it helps to have that kind of analysis, because he knows when it's all about to fucking fall to pieces, and he can sort of say, AJ, no mate, stop now, and get your head on. And there's not been too many points where I feel like my head is gone or my head is going. I feel very level-headed, which he'll probably agree with. But there has been a few times recently where, especially the week post show where I raised my calories and my body weight went up like a pound and a half. And I had this sort of like, because the show day Sunday, such a high calorie day, I think that the assimilation of those carbohydrates, which was a lot, over the course of the next few days, gave me sort of like a filmed watery look. And I didn't really get rid of that until, maybe sort of Monday, Tuesday this week. And Jack was like, yeah, you're much tighter. Like you're back. You're back where you were. But the issue with sort of coming to back where I was is that I think now the requirement of carbohydrates to actually stay full is actually gone up, and I'm still in a position where I'm like, should I add, should I not add? And my body weight's been maintaining, but I think the look has got progressively flatter throughout the week, despite my body weight not really changing, which is interesting. It's all interesting data, but the reality is, the way my nutrients are set up at the moment, not much changes. Like, we're talking 5 to 10 gram variations if I make a change. One thing that I did do earlier in the week, which is quite cool to notice, so I ran 2 days at, 2 days at 30 grams of fat, okay? And I bumped my carbohydrates up to equate the calories. Wow! I felt like I've never felt worse this entire prep. I know personally Nunez has run 30 grams of fat for quite a while, but it just shows the individual variability on how you handle dietary fat. My body was like, no, do not drop fats that low. I'll tell you how I felt on that day. Hunger was uncontrollable. It felt like I was just nothing would ever fill me up. I felt just like every minute of the day was really, really hard to just get going, and like the lethargic feel, just everything was like 10 times worse than it should be. And all I did was, the last few days, I took my fats back up to 40. So I added 10 grams of Udo's oil, or 10 mils of Udo's oil, however you want to weigh it. It's the same thing. And immediately I felt back to life, like immediately. Not like I don't feel like I'm out of prep. I just feel like I feel like I'm back in prep mode, as opposed to like literally veering on the side of death. So yeah, that was a interesting thing to try, and I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest, if you want to feel okay. But yeah, like, I'm not necessarily playing about with things because I don't want to risk anything. But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. So I'm just sort of back to essentially the macros, apart from increased carbohydrate, that I was prior to sort of the UK DFBA finals. So on the run to the UK DFBA finals, was at about, let me just park the car whilst I concentrate here. So I was sort of 45 to 450 carbohydrate, ran about 40 fat, 175 protein, and now I'm at 470 carbohydrate, 40 fat, 175 protein. So carbohydrates have just gone up. Steps and activity wise is exactly the same. They haven't really changed, because, to be honest, me and my client Noah were talking about this. Like, we don't really find it like an issue to hit those steps. And to be honest, like, I actually just quite enjoy moving about a lot. And it actually splits my day up quite nicely, in terms of the fact that it keeps me busy. If I was to take my steps down to 10,000, that would be like one and a bit walks, really. It'd be my morning walk and then whatever I accumulate throughout the day. And that evening bit where I do like a 20-30 minute walk, that would be filled with just sitting down and potentially just feeling a bit hungry and sorry for myself. Yeah. So on busier days when I have lots of check-ins, yes, it might help to do less steps. But when I don't have loads of check-ins, it actually helps keep me busy. So, and I'm sure that Noah, if he watches this, will agree. But yeah, guys, I'm just at Tesco pre-workout, just picking up some courgettes and some green tea, fun. And then I'm going to hit legs. So I've got legs today, which I'm looking forward to. Film some bits. Cheers, guys. So, decided to leave the footage raw from the deadlifts, and I'm going to talk through how I perform hip thrusts. So, client of mine asked me, do we pause at the bottom? I sometimes do, I sometimes don't. You can see me on this higher rep set that I'm kind of pausing at the bottom, reinitiating my hip drive, reinitiating my activation of my glutes by pressing them up to the barbell, because there'll always be a little bit of a gap, especially when you're lean, between the barbell and your hips. And then what I'm looking to do at the top is really trying to tuck my head down and externally rotate my knees outwards. Okay, so externally rotate the knees, hips up, chin down, and that will really, really fire up your glutes. So give that a shot in your next hip thrust session. Alright guys, that's the end of episode 2. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much if you stayed around for the whole half an hour. Love you lots. If you stayed around for the whole half an hour and you're not cheating, screenshot this image or take a picture of it and whack it on your Instagram story. Cheers guys, and see you in the next one.